There we are. We are live, Paul. Another Thursday, another live stream.
Yeah, great to be here, and really looking forward to tonight's guest. Informative, really interesting, cutting edge information that he's going to be sharing with us. But yeah, how's your week been?
Well, apart from an exciting recording day yesterday, Paul, that was really the excitement of the week. Really, if you
Yeah,
want to tell
quite good,
people
wasn't it?
what we did yesterday.
Well, we'd been talking for quite a while, hadn't we? That we were going to interview Robbie Williams and Mick Park, and we knew the date, but we didn't want to say it just in case it didn't happen. It was put back a week, so we managed to do that.
Yeah,
And yeah, we're just waiting for the green light, and we'll post that up as and when. So yeah, a good interview and quite lengthy. So a bit of interesting information for our listeners.
and I'm sure when it goes out, I'm sure you'll pretty much enjoy it as well. It's quite informal, wasn't it? It was like a fireside chat, as it were.
Well, it was really relaxed because I mean, Mick and Rob are really good friends. I've been talking to him for a number of years, and so it was just relaxed. It was good. Brilliant. So we've got a few people in chat. Alex Thompson, awake, fire spirit. I didn't mean you were awake, Alex. I know you are. Rivington Pike Beast, Simon Riley, Carl Dan. It was great to see you last weekend, Carl. And well, Alex as well, Simon Riley as well, Rebecca King. I know Linny will be in. Pete will just be watching from the sidelines, and Mrs. Linny will be in. Mel, hi Mel, good to see you. Rebecca King, Steve Tees, Gavin Still Crazy, Martin Abbas, hi Martin. Welsh Dragon Rising. Do you know it's 40 and 23? Steph, Susan, just looking. We're all just looking, Susan. And it's all good. It's great to have so much support, and thank you.
And just going to remind everybody, if you've got a question for Paul or his guest tonight, Jim, please put the questions in caps. Jessica, who's doing the moderating tonight, will send them through to me to read, to put on the screen for Paul and Jim. So without further ado then, we are set to go. I will disappear and we'll add Jim to the stage.
Hi, Jim.
How you doing?
Oh, really looking forward. So this is the second time you've been on, and you've got more research to share with us. So if anyone didn't know from last time, it's Dr. Jim Segala, and you've got over 30 years of experience in the scientific world and engineering, as well as being scientific researcher at Skinwalker Ranch for a time, which is what is going to interest a lot of our listeners. So, Jim, welcome to Truth Proof.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
No, it's really good, and I know we had 5 minutes before we came on, and yeah, you've been discovering some new things. But before we get to that, Jim, I don't know if we did this last time we spoke, but what about a bit of a background prior to Skinwalker on yourself for a few minutes, if possible?
Sure. I think that my history kind of leads up to the point where it all ended at some point on Skinwalker, but I had done some engineering work. I had degrees in engineering, decided to go into physics after my engineering. I had some engineering career, and I was very fortunate to be able to, once I finished my physics degree, land a internship with Hal Puthoff at the Institute for Advanced Study in Austin, and learned how to be a scientist in the kind of the strange world. He does a lot of research into things that people find, very, high end and out of this world. So I trained with him for many, many years. Hal Puthoff, for people that don't realize this, was advisors to Bob Bigelow and Brandon Fugel on the Skinwalker and other places. And when there was injuries on the ranch in 2000, I believe it was 2017, there were several injuries on the ranch. Brandon contacted Hal and said, could you send up some scientists? We have this problem here on the ranch. There are people getting hurt for some very strange reasons we don't know. And we'd like to have somebody come up here and figure out why. So I was sent up there with a forensics neurologist, and we together came up with the theory on why these people were getting hurt and allowed them to feel comfortable of bringing other people on. That's why it's a place where people can come on. And we came up with some pretty startling revelations when we were there. And that kind of kicked off how I went from being just a regular person on the street who never really heard of experiencing or UFOs or anything to somebody that has done a lot of research now into the field.
The injuries then, Jim, were these injuries that were manifesting from the inside as opposed to a bang on the head, simplified?
Yeah, you would hope so. I mean, everybody gets nervous when they're walking down the street and they get hurt from something other than their insides. But it turns out that no, this person actually got hurt from something from the outside that influenced his metabolic state and his physiology and left some physical damage and also some neurological damage. So this was something physical from the outside.
Physical from the outside, but did the witness actually feel the physical, or did it just manifest over days, or was there a few instances of different types?
So it started, it was kind of a very interesting case. It started as a signal or a hearing voices. I mean, this person's life never had any incidents like that, never had any out of body things or heard voices, and then started hearing a voice at the point where it was like a loud voice, a very, very strong voice. No physical damage yet. Went through several weeks like that, kept hearing the same voice over and over again. And then things started to escalate, get a little bit more interesting, I should say, had personality changes, went through periods of catatonia where they just, stopped and lost time for a little bit. Then it evolved to the point where this person started getting very, very bad headaches. I mean, like 10 out of 10 headaches, and eventually got to the point where there was an actual lesion that was developed on the back of the person's head without any physical trauma or things like that. Normally you would associate that with somebody getting hit with like in a car accident or something, like a football player or a boxer or something like that. This was something that had no physical trauma, yet there was physical damage to the back of the head, significant. When we got there, we were able to have access to all sorts of medical data, MRIs, CTs, all that kind of stuff. And we found out that whatever injury happened was deep within the brain. So the gray matter actually was damaged to the point where the only way that could actually happen is if you were, sitting inside like a radiation chamber or something like that, receiving treatments.
And was this individual, this man or woman, were they on the ranch 24/7?
No, they only visited the ranch on a periodic basis to do maintenance and things like that. Somebody that was on the ranch occasionally doing things, and that's where, and actually a lot of this happened off the ranch, but we associate it with the ranch, and it seemed to happen because of what was happening on the ranch.
So off the ranch, are we talking the term the hitchhiker effect? Something's coming back with the individual? Or is it the residue of
with this particular case, it was more that they were, they would spend time on the ranch and then would get off the ranch, and that's when they started feeling this uncomfortableness, like they were being followed or being watched. People chasing them in the cars, or they would be, very, very nervous at times. You get that fright feeling. You ever get that where you just know something's weird, and so they were getting that. The personality changes were very significant. Where the wife would notice that there's something very wrong with this person. And it just led to the point where this person got admitted to the hospital and the attending physicians saw that they had this, incredible lesion in the back of the head.
So this feeling of well, first of all, the voices, did he say what he was hearing? Was there a message? Yeah. Was there a message?
So the message to this person felt that he was being given instructions to be tested on whether or not they were capable of following the directions. So in other words, it was like being tested to do something. Are you capable of following my instructions? And that was actually what he felt that this was actually happening.
And I mean, I know we're not going to jump into that field, but it almost sounds like demonic possession. Drawing similarities, and do you not
similar?
Do you see similarities?
Yeah, but this is more real in that he felt that he was like being asked to carry out these things to a point where if you don't, then sinister things will happen to you. That's what the feeling was. So we interviewed this. Obviously, when we got there, we did everything evidence-based. So everything was done very, very, very with scientific methods. So you sit down and you interview. So, okay, what happened next? What happened next? So as you drill down and you start understanding what this person, as you take the anecdotal things that they're saying, you piece them all together, you realize that this person was actually scared, scared of what was being said to them. It was like, you need to go do this. It wasn't asking them. It was like instructing them. You need to do this. You need to do this. You need to do this.
You noted, or this man or woman's partner noted, the personality changes. Did it make them aggressive or just frightened and secret?
Yeah. And I think that's fairly typical when you are in a fright mode. Your personality you get very aggressive, right? I mean, that's a natural human thing. You get very aggressive and you start, reaching out to the people that are around you, and that aggression starts spilling out. So they notice this change. And then once the headache started, I mean, significant headaches, like migraine level headaches, admitted to the hospital. They tried to treat it to some extent, was sent home. And then it just got so bad. They got finally brought to the hospital because now this lesion started developing on the back of their head, or this person's head. And then all of a sudden it got to the point where, they had to treat it.
That's incredible. And I mean, obviously I don't suppose there's a right or a wrong answer, or we know, but the headaches, do you think obviously they're a result of what's happening, but are they a result, do you think, of him not complying with what he's being told, or did he have any views on that?
Again, that was a posting. I don't really know. That's something that was more kind of in his head as far as what, but it pointed to the fact that I think you're 100% correct. I think that he refused to follow these instructions. I think that he kind of, when you're told something, you don't understand why you're being told this. You kind of back off. I mean, we're humans, right? You resist, right? And I think the more and more he was told this thing, the more he resisted. And I think that's what started changing it. So I think you're 100% correct. And the analysis that we did actually pointed to the fact that, he didn't comply with these wishes, and he continued to do the things that it told him not to do.
Did you come away? I mean, you're still researching, and I've no doubt you've maybe gone on doing this for years, but have you come away feeling that it's more negative than positive, whatever it is that's interacting?
Well, since that particular injury that happened in 2017, 2018 timeframe, I've had probably 35 more instances like that, maybe even to the level of that, where exactly what you said. Some of these things are very, very positive, but some of these things are very, very negative. So, and you get a big span of things. So there are some people literally have been healed of certain things. And really? We have documented proof of the medical proof of that. Some people have gone through and had instances where they would been significantly hurt to the point where, they've developed these neurological problems overnight. I mean, they'd wake up, well, not overnight, but there was a particular instance that was actually quite interesting. The person saw a craft in the air, never had anything, no paranormal, anything up to that point, saw a craft in the air. After that, had significant headache and all these problems, lost the ability to speak, had all these neurological problems develop, went to the hospital, got diagnosed with a acute case of Parkinson's, which is like, Parkinson's is not an acute thing, right? There's no sudden onset of a part, but had Parkinson's symptoms. Took about a month for those to go away, and now that person's back to normal again. But it all started by this, had a vision of a craft, and ever since then had a definite neurological. I mean, the doctors actually had MRIs and CTs and everything.
And I noted that you said a vision of a craft. So once again, no right or wrong answer here, because I don't know. Even the things that we've seen, I don't know whether we're actually seeing them in the real, or whether these images are being projected into our minds in some instances. But did you alter your mindset from the beginning of the research at Skinwalker? Have you started to change your belief system? Is belief even the word? Have you seen things that have made you realize that something truly unexplained is taking place?
Well, yeah, I think that once you start gathering data, so I gathered so much data from so many people, so I have lots and lots of data. You see patterns, right? And mathematics allows you to use these these tools to see patterns, and you start seeing these incredible patterns that you never would have ever anticipated. Like, for instance, that you can have, like, this particular case. Actually a pretty profound case. This person walked out of a movie theater with her family. Everybody in the family said, "I don't see anything." She said, "I see that crap. Do you see that crap?" The entire family said, "No, I do not see that crap." That's when her disease started happening. So then you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, was there a projection into her specifically of this vision from something that then had a it caused some neurological damage to her, but nobody else received it? Turns out this person in a very early age had a very similar sickness where they had neurological problems at a very early age. So you start to see this pattern developing where people have been injured at some point, maybe through some physical trauma, or maybe as a child you had a fever that was very high fever, or some sickness that had a little bit of neurological change that maybe left a scar that made you a little bit more susceptible to seeing these kind of things. And you start seeing this pattern. If you do it over enough people, you say, well, every time I see this, I start, you go back and say, oh, by the way, have you ever had any physical damage to your, neurological damage? It's, oh yeah, by the way, when I was 5 years old, I had this affliction, I had this rare case of whatever, and I got cured. So if I heard that once or heard that twice, you say, oh, that's nice. But when you start hearing it 30, 40, 50 times from the same type of instances, you say, wait a minute, that's a pattern that actually holds some scientific value.
Yeah. And whatever it is that's interacting, I keep saying whatever, because I'm not sure. Well, I've just no idea, to be honest, what it is that's what we're dealing with. But does it interact with us on the whole, a certain type of individual? Somebody say more left brain. Does it then? Do you know where I'm going with that? Is there a certain type of person that the phenomena? Would you call it the phenomena?
Yeah, I like to call it that because every time you give something a name, it gets But yeah, I like to call it a phenomena because that's kind of a generic term that you can
just
use.
Before you answer that, then, Jim, is it phenomena or phenomenon? Are we dealing with more than one?
Yeah, I think
singular.
Maybe plural. It's very difficult. I think it's just a general case that there is something causing these interactions with human beings. It might be a group of people, and it might not even be here. It might be at some other planet someplace. We don't know. But it is definitely something that manifests itself in a physical way because we can measure it. I mean, there are definite, every time you get a lot of these experiences, there's always some subtle change in the environment that scientific instruments actually end up measuring. And you get very, very subtle things happening. And then, if you get enough of this kind of stuff, you start seeing patterns again, and you start being able to, and I hate to use this word, predict these things, but you can give confidence of how things might be progressing for a particular person.
Yeah. So to jump back to the certain type of individual then, and that's not profiling anybody, and there's no discrimination, but does it affect certain groups of people?
Absolutely. So I find that people that have had medical injuries in the past are very susceptible to that kind of thing. It happens to be that Native Americans are very, very adept at experiencing these things. And when they have this instruments around them, you see these very large deviations from what you would call normal signals in the environment. So Native Americans are incredible receivers of this information or these sensations that are out there, and they could perceive things. It's amazing. But it's not made up in their head, because at the same time they're sensing this, we're also measuring things in the environment that indicate that there is something strange going on in the environment. It's other than normal kind of signals. So you find that, so you say, well, what is going on? So if a Native American or somebody that is attuned to this gets into an environment, it kind of looks like they're actually amplifying that stuff that's already there. And it may be that, and this is one of the things that came out from what I'm understanding with all this research, is that there's lots of areas around the world that have these, and I hate to use these words, but maybe energy levels. And when a person of high sensitivity goes them, it seems that they amplify those, and that's when they start seeing, but other people start seeing stuff around them. So it almost looks like they get in there and start vibrating with them. I don't want to start getting into that kind of stuff, because it's not.
Well, it's not where you want to go. But in essence, then you ask. Well, you'll tell me if you're not saying that. You're saying that it's interacting with the people or certain individuals more than it's being present on the land. Do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. And I've had so much data to point to that. When you can take a group of people, say 20 people, pass them through this area, and only a certain number of those people will actually claim to have some kind of reaction. And when they do have these reactions, other people start getting the reaction. So it's like these particular people will then spawn off other kind of things. But what happens is that the people that don't really experience are the ones that don't have any kind of experience in those regions. So it looks like certain people get into an area and they make that, whatever it is, that phenomena, wake up and incur, and then actually intent on other people.
Yeah. Do you know the area where we spend lots and lots of time? I mean, I'd love to say research, but there's only me and a handful of people going there, and we've got just about zero funding, if I'm being truthful. But you can take certain individuals to that location and things happen. And our listeners in stream will have heard me say this many times, but I always use this guy as an example, Lee Haywood. And Lee went to the area of Bempton to explain what it was that we were seeing. These spheres of orange, globes of orange light that just appear. They don't fly from anywhere, Jim. They just appear.
Sure.
and switch off at will, as just like a light switch. And he's fairly skeptical, but in a good way. There's no sarcasm or condescending comments from him. And we're driving up this lane, and he's saying, "Come on then, Paul, explain to me what these lights look like and how they appear." And I'm no joking. I mean, if he ever comes in here and he'll hear me saying it, I said like that. And a light literally appeared. Not as I said it was there when I looked. Yeah. Then over the course of that night, these lights appeared for over a 3 or 4 hour period, and then culminating with a large one in the field with us that it's kind of imploded and disappeared. But I've always said that was for Lee Haywood, that not for me. That I don't know why, but he said he went again on his own and he experienced that. So do you have repeat experiences, as in people?
Yeah, like I said, so you get a certain type of person, and then it always comes that they've had, like I said, they've had something happen to them in the past, or they're a certain type, or maybe their DNA is a certain type, where they get into an area, and then all of a sudden other people started to experience things, and they start to experience things. But if the person that really doesn't have a normal experience goes into there, they don't have anything. But you have to realize with nature and the way that our bodies are, those experiences might be induced, but might not be induced unless some amplification gets some person that comes in and that has something big enough. It might be there, it's just that we can't sense it. It might be some low level signal than somebody of really powerful sensitivity comes in and kind of shakes things up a little bit, and everybody starts feeling it.
How about yourself? Has any of this affected you? I know you may be wanting to remain sort of neutral in this, but have you had experiences there yourself?
Well, I would love to say no, but unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately.
I'd love to say no. You're in the wrong spot here, Jim.
Yeah. So I think that there are some people that, because of their upbringing and the way that they've been trained through their education, are taught constantly to think rational. Right? I'm an engineer. Yeah. My first degree is in engineering. Engineers are taught to be rational. I mean, everything you do is rational, right? Because you have to build physical things. And then, so maybe those people are just not adapt to, because you have all these filters. You just keep getting all these filters into your head constantly. So it's very possible that I don't have, these strong abilities because of all the background that I have. But I've had several instances where I've gone with, and this is actually answering your original question.
Yeah.
I've gone to, there's a place in Utah called Blind Frog Ranch. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Oh, I have, yeah.
And I visited there a few times. The one time I went there with two very powerful experiencers, people that have lots of experiences and, documented and everything. I went with them and visited the place, and there was lots of instances where, like, all of a sudden all the noise went away. There was no noise whatsoever. I go to areas and it just, you feel very frightened. But if I didn't go with them, and I had gone there many times without them, and I didn't feel anything. I mean, zero. I've been to Skinwalker Ranch, never felt a thing. But as soon as I went with somebody that has these abilities, that's when I started feeling it. So that kind of tells me that it's certain people create amplifications and kind of make these things happen, and other people start feeling them around them. It's just, I mean,
and you felt that, Jim?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So I'm not saying that I had the experience. I think what happened to me is that I felt what came off of them. I kind of
like
shared theirs.
Yeah.
I think.
And this lower silence, this descent into, I call it the lower silence, this strange descent. It's typical in all of these, not in all, but in a lot of cases of even the cryptid sightings, the UFO sightings, all of these things. Everybody, they'll talk about the environmental changes, and suddenly I can't hear the sea anymore, and I can't hear the birds anymore. So what do you think's happening? Because obviously this phenomena has not got the ability to stop the sea. It's affecting the individual. So it's not an environmental thing. That's what I'm saying, because it can't blanket the land and stop the sea. We've heard instances on the cliff tops, because I'm very close to the North Sea, where they've suddenly been walking, and so all the sound of seabirds, the sea, everything's stopped. So what's your opinion on that?
So I think that it interacts with sentient objects, right? So we're a sentient object. So that's a good question. So I happened to be standing there with the two very, very powerful experiencers. All of a sudden, there was absolutely no sound whatsoever. So the only rational thing that I can think of is that, one, I was told by this phenomena to only hear what you're telling me. So I got turned off. But it's also, maybe it interacts with all of the objects or all the species that are out in the surroundings. That's very possible.
Yeah.
So it's like, did I stop hearing is one thing, or did everything stop producing noise is the other possibility.
But that would rule out the sea. Surely that it can't stop the sea.
But the people next to me heard the exact, or didn't hear the exact. So the people next to me didn't hear anything. And this lasted for about 30 seconds. So we all stood there, we got looked at each other, says, I don't hear anything. And then all of a sudden it just went away. You heard the crickets again, the birds again, everything, the wind again, all that stuff. But I could hear them fine. It was perfectly fine.
It's an incredible piece of research that you and your team are doing, because it literally does around the world of these reports and accounts. There was a guy on these cliff tops a few months ago, Mark, I'll not say his surname, been all over the place shooting and gamekeepering, man of the land, and he contacted me to say that he went up there, never had it before anywhere, and suddenly felt like, because you mentioned eyes on him from everywhere, and feeling quite nervous and frightened.
Yep.
And he carried on walking. He's in the dark. We know that when you're in a dark place, you can become a bit edgy. But I mean, we've gone up there for years, and this guy walks down to us in the night and walks off on his own, and there's no problem with it. And he said, I literally I felt like something was going to jump out on me. And I carried on walking, and it kind of filtered out and it dissipated. And on the way back, it weren't there. So it's just these repeat areas. They're everywhere, aren't they? Did it frighten you?
It did. I admit that I was very frightened. I happened to be with two people I was friendly with. So there was a little camaraderie there, but I was worried. It's like no noise. I mean, we're in nature. I've never heard that before. Every time something new happens to humans, they get very frightened. But getting back to your point, this whole frightening, let's talk about that for a second. This whole
Yeah, please
frightening,
do.
our whole psyche, the way that we are built is based upon survival. So we have a natural thing in our brain that senses danger and puts us in these aware situations, right? That's just part of our being human. Actually, all species on the planet are like that. But it doesn't mean that we know exactly why we're being frightened. It's very possible that we could be sensing these realizations, right? We can have these premonitions, but at a low level that our brain, our back brain, our subconscious brain said, there's something going on. I'm getting something. I don't know what it is, but you should be, heightened awareness.
Yeah.
There are some instances where it's a little bit more powerful and it actually realizes into some, like a vision, like you might see an orb or you might see a UFO, but the small stuff, part of the research that I did was that, these big demonstrative, like I see this like orb, I see the UFO. I mean, that's great. But we're looking for the little subtle things that gives us really good statistical information so you can carry it forward and being able to, you can be able to make some like determinations of where it's coming from. So it doesn't have to be like this, big burning bush or anything like that.
No.
It could be a very subtle thing that all of a sudden you start feeling frightened. You're walking down the street and you just feel like somebody's looking at you. How many people have ever told me that? It's like thousands of people. Anyway, so I think our body is the perfect scientific instrument. It can absorb all of this information. It's just that we have a hard time interpreting it.
It's almost like there's two things taking place. You've got this hyper awareness that something really strange is happening. Yet you've also got this rabbit in headlights scenario where you don't know how to react. You don't know what to do. So it's fight or flight kind of thing. It really is difficult. And like you said, you were frightened. I've had kind of suffered the same thing a couple of times up there and felt this extreme fear that I've not known where it's come from. Well, twice actually. And there's no explaining and feeling like there's eyes on you. So, the fear, do you think it's something triggering the chemicals within our bodies to create this fear? Or is there something else happening? Once again, I'm not even expecting you to have an answer for this, Jim. I'm throwing it out there.
It's my training, so I went through, did a lot of research into. Basically, my research was built upon how does energy interact with the human body, specifically the brain. So then that follows, of course, with all the radiation that people are given when they have cancer and things like that. So that was the research that I did when I was in school and going through my postdocs and things like that. So I knew a lot about that and I had a lot of experience with that. And what you find out is that when you start introducing these outside energies, like maybe ions or radiation or gamma rays, and they enter your brain even at super low levels, it triggers things in your brain that causes these stray neurons to fire, that causes memories to come up, that causes things to happen. Your brain tries to rationalize everything, and when you get these stray signals, it will bring up an image of you that allows you, that says, okay, well, here's an orb, or here's a spaceship, or here's this. So the physical triggers that can enter your brain have to get realized somehow with the entire brain. And sometimes it's just visions.
Okay. So how does it work in your mind then with people who claim to have had alien abduction and they've got actual physical scars afterwards? There's got to be something happening on a physical level then, and it's not all kind of neurological. It's not all in our minds.
Well, I think that goes with the people that I had worked with. Most of them had some physical change of their body, some injuries. I'm going to call them injuries because most of them were injuries. They had to go and they had to get fixed by a doctor, so they were injured. So this thing does leave a physical remnants in your body. So if somebody says, well, I've been abducted and I've got these things, they might not have ever gone to some, spaceship. They could have all happened right there in a millisecond. It could have just, whatever happened to them could happen.
Yeah.
But the signals that they got to make them have these does leave a mark on you. I mean, there's no question about it.
Are there any other examples of strange cases at Skinwalker or Blind Frog Ranch that you've worked on that you want to share with us?
There has been several cases that go past the norms of like, okay, that's very interesting, that's very cool, but it's like go into the realm of like, wow, that's really, really dangerous to be around. I hope that never happens to anybody. But yeah, there has been a lot of instances where people would come home and they would have things moved around their house. They'd have they would find out that there was like some pet was, all of a sudden got these incredible illnesses. They didn't have it, they didn't have before. Going back to this whole problem with hitchhikers, they would go home, people would spend time in a region that had a lot of activity, go home, and then all of a sudden a family member would get, seriously ill, or, maybe just pick up some kind of illness. So there is these physical things, and probably the most tragic ones are the ones where people have gone home. And I have a lot of examples of that. People have gone home and then their family members have gotten sick. I mean, rare blood diseases, and they would have, the physical trauma.
It's truly, it's frightening, that in itself, isn't it? And you talk about, just to jump away from that temporarily, but we're still staying within the home. You talk about going home, things moving about. It's almost poltergeist type question, type phenomena. Do you not think, or are we just dressing it up and using a different name for it?
Well, I don't know, because it's kind of weird, because the people that actually got home don't get the sickness. So why the hell would that happen? Right. So
sorry, James, what did you say? Sorry.
So the people that actually
that have been there, on ground zero,
they're not getting sick.
Yeah.
It's the people around them. So is that these people are so attuned that their brains could mask them and protect them, but the people that they then interact with later are not so attuned. They haven't had the time to protect themselves or evolve or have their brains change physiology. But they're picking up these rare diseases, these autoimmune diseases that are horrible. So if it happened once, if it happened twice, that's, okay, but it's hundreds of times. And it's, I work with a guy by the name of Dr. Kit Green, who is cataloged. I don't know if you know him. It's he's cataloged a lot of these things, and one of his things that he now works with, Colin Kelleher, Dr. Colin Kelleher, them. So I've been working with the two of them on getting them some research through the stuff that I've been doing, to giving them the ability to understand, is all this stuff associated with autoimmune diseases? Are these experiences causing, or maybe not causing, but linked somehow to autoimmune? Because it seems like every time you see this stuff, there's some kind of illness, autoimmune illness, where the body attacks itself.
And when you're saying some kind of illness, is there a more common illness that's being displayed that's coming through?
Well, generally autoimmune. I'm going to leave it to the professionals. I'm going to leave it to Kit and Colin to actually get into that. But it could be celiac happens. Well, maybe celiac is more of a dietary thing, or it's more prevalent now. But there's a lot of other autoimmunes that are popping up, where in people that have reported experiencing.
So your research went into the unexplained at Skinwalker, but it has to extend beyond Skinwalker, surely. But do you think it's groundbreaking?
It is groundbreaking if it helps people get through their day better, because they're very scared of the experiences that they're having. And that's most of the people that I've worked with have that problem, where they say, I'm afraid to go out. If I go catatonic while I'm driving my car, that's bad. Or if I lose if something happens to me when I'm not in complete control, that's really bad. So they get scared. And that's the reason that, this is something that I want to make sure that I answer correctly without,
And so somebody goes, we keep coming back to Skinwalker, but we've got to do, because that's where you've been doing a lot of your work, isn't it? Somebody goes there and they have an experience, they go home, and it starts to affect things, or there's we'll call it the residue of what they've experienced is there. There's a presence there. Have you noted then during the data that it lasts, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, a certain amount of time before it dissipates, or is there no data on that?
Well, I have a lot of data on that. So one of the ones that, so don't do so. What I found out when I was on Skinwalker is that Skinwalker is just a small piece of the pie.
Yeah.
It's Uinta Basin. If you want to look at the Uinta Basin, it's pretty big, and it encompasses Skinwalker, encompasses Blind Frog Ranch, and there's a bunch of other places that are hotspots in that area. So I turned my sights on that whole area, which allowed me to really have a big population of people, very spread out, very diverse. All sorts of ethnic groups, all sorts of professionalisms. So the data that I got was kind of very spread out, not specific to one area, but a lot of the things pointed, and it has a lot of similarity to this one case where somebody decided somebody that was actually in the study that had equipment in their, had this equipment in their house that was constantly measuring and taking readings and everything. One weekend, they went up to the Uinta Basin, which is just to the north, and they went around and they did caving. People love to go caving and things like that. And this area up there by the Native Americans always was a sacred area. And
is this the crystal?
Excuse me?
Is this the crystal?
Yes. Did you hear about this?
Yeah.
This is one of the most profound ones that I actually had physical evidence and scientific evidence to show it, where they then chipped off a piece of crystal off of one of the walls. And it was a normal day for them. They had, gone up there many times, but this is the first time they actually chipped off a piece of crystal, and they brought it home with them. They thought it was cool. When they got home, all hell broke loose. They were having all of these, these problems. They had that, that fright feeling where everything was bad. Not only the people that went up there, was just this person and the husband, but the kids started having problems. Their parents started having problems. So, I mean, there goes the hitchhiker, right? So it's like they brought this thing home. The instrumentation that was in their house started to go really crazy. So you started to get these readings that didn't make any sense. You had a lot of, very, very high microwave that they couldn't possibly have made, themselves. And a lot of these signals that were, and it got to the point when they were having really a hard problem, in their jobs and everything like that. So for 3 or 4 days, they decided to take that crystal and they brought it back the next weekend. When they got home, it took a few days, but when they got home, the whole thing died out. It took a while. Dissipated. The instrumentation dissipated. All that stuff started to come down. Their parents was relieved. They said, "Oh wow, this is." I don't even think the parents knew that they took it back, but they kind of called. I think they actually called and said, everything is back to normal. We're okay now. So that was the most dramatic event, and that kind of told you that yes, it's like it proved a lot of little things, right? It proved that whatever this phenomena is reacting to the way people interact with the property, with the land, and things like that. And
I suppose as a scientist, did you find it hard to? Because obviously you've just retold that account and it's fascinating, but did you find it hard to actually believe it? And I'm not saying these people are lying in any way. These things happened and you believe what they're telling you, but there's no proof of it, is there, apart from what they're telling you?
Well, the proof is that when they got back, the scientific instruments that were in there started to go crazy. I mean, literally crazy. So the way that it works is that...
Sorry, Jim. I'm sorry for cutting across you. So they'd actually got these scientific instruments
in their house.
Yep. Yeah, which you can fill us in on this shortly. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, if you want. Sure. That'd be great. But if that hadn't happened, then it would just be another anecdotal entry into the list, right? We got millions of those, right? The reason that the instrumentation exists is that it backs up what they're saying. Not backs up, but it corroborates what they're saying with scientific data, and that's super important. And because if scientific data by itself, that data is worthless, right? If you just put instrumentation in the house and you didn't do any, you just left it there, it doesn't give you anything. If you just took all of these anecdotal messages that these people have, it doesn't give you anything.
No.
When you tie together and you correlate those and you find that they happen exactly at the same time or within some time frame, that's significant. That's statistical data that you can put into a model and actually start making some predictions and things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, this is what we're lacking.
Yeah,
we're getting the anecdotal evidence or data because it's just people, one man's word or one woman's word, isn't it? But you're gathering that, but you've got it backed up with the scientific instrumentation.
Exactly. And so there's 300 of those.
That was when I think we're lacking, I mean me.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So there's 300 individual ones of those things, not as dramatic as this particular case. There are some that are like very close, but this was the biggest one. This was like the, oh my, like, wow. They didn't, the thing is, I have to make sure everybody understands this, that they had no idea what the instrument's reading until weeks later. So they had no idea what the instrument, anything was happening. What happens is that when this data comes in, the system is gathering it all together, and I'm watching it, all come to fruition and happen. It's like, I see the messages coming in, like, I got home, things were crazy. My kids were very ornery, that kind of thing. You can start, and then all of a sudden I look at the instrumentation and it's going crazy up and down, and that's when you start saying, oh, what the heck's going on here?
Something's happening, yeah. Can these, jumping away from that, can you ship these overseas?
Yeah, we have actually some going to York, England.
40 miles away from me. 40 miles
so
away.
There's a group going there, I guess in a few months or something like that. They're bringing some out just to start reading and trying to get some readings and stuff like that. So yeah,
seriously,
we're doing that.
We'll
Bulgaria is another place.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, it's like some people say, well, it only happens in the US, or it only happens here. It happens everywhere. Don't kid yourself, though. I don't think there's any place in the world now with all the social media going on that you can find all this information right out of social media, that it's happening everywhere.
And the information is relayed back to you guys via the internet, obviously.
Yeah, the cloud. Yep. Everything is all cloud-based. So we have lots of stuff going on there.
That's fabulous, Jim. And I'm not just saying it. How many instruments would you need to conduct anything? Would they have to be placed strategically, or would one just give you some? Well, one would give you some kind of indication of events of strangeness.
So the original size. So I spent from 2000. I don't know what it was, like 2020 to 2022 or 23. So we had 35 devices out there with verified experiencers, people that have had problems and things like that.
Okay.
So we collected data from them. We also had some other people that didn't have experiences, but we wanted to have some blind, the blind tests and stuff like that. So we had that. So, but it was like one device per. But now, actually, I just happen to have it next to me. So we took that device and we made it into a watch.
Really?
So now people, because everybody kept complaining to me, says, a lot of this stuff happens when I'm not at home. It happens a lot when at night. It happens, when I'm in my room and stuff like that. But it happens when I'm driving my car. What can you do for me there? And I didn't have an answer for him. So I said, all right. So, I said, look, I'm going to make something portable that allows you to, wear your watch, and it has all the same, most of the same capabilities. But I learned a little bit.
It's fabulous. And so after we've got through some questions, Les, you can give us an indication of what data these bits of equipment or piece of equipment are gathering. Okay, Les, here we go. Questions, yeah?
Yeah, thanks for that. I was really, really engrossed in that detail, Jim. And talking about detail, we're working with an electronics expert ourselves at this end, Peter Masters, and we took some readings around the Rudston monolith and various other areas, didn't we, Paul? And so his question is, on his machines, he's picking up 1.6 gigahertz frequency right at the base of this monolithic stone at Rudston, and
at Bempton.
And at Bempton as well. So like two places are giving out the 1.6 gigahertz readings. How interesting do you think, are related, do you think that is to these ancient monuments and areas, Jim?
1.6, that doesn't, I don't know about that area. And in the US, that's not a standard. I mean, it's off the military bands. It's 1.6 is kind of like a frequency that's probably, I don't know if it's occupied by a lot of different things that you can look. There's probably agencies, but if it's high enough amplitude. So normally what you find is that it's not so much a reading that is like static. So you just, something is like buzzing there. It looks like it, if you see it pulsing, that means it's coming from something that is sending, pulse, like a pulse microwave or something like that.
Well, yeah, I know 1.6 is what they've been detecting at Skinwalker. And so I just wondered if there were any correlation. I mean, Peter went with myself and Les. He took a load of electronic equipment, some of it which he's built himself. Took a laptop so we can see what's happening in real time. And sure enough, this monolith, the tallest standing stone in Great Britain, called the Rudston Monolith, which sits, incidentally, between York, where you've sent that equipment, and where I am. And it's kicking out 1.6. And we also went to Bempton, where these strange things are happening, and that was also happening. But yeah, fascinating. And
but these are peaking up to 1.6 from a pretty low base reading, aren't they, as well, Paul?
Yeah. So I don't know. I suppose Peter's asked us to ask you the question, so we threw it out there.
Okay, right. I'm going to put a question on the screen and now. And the question is from Gavin Still Crazy. Hi, Jim. Do you think that the phenomenon has anything to do with the basin the ranch sits in? So I guess he's talking about the geographical area. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with it. I think that whole Uinta Basin is, because if you look at if you look at the mountains that come up, so you got these mountains that come and it kind of pulls down. So at the very bottom is Skinwalker, at the very top, or maybe in the middle somewhere, is Blind Frog. Right. There must be something going on underneath that is amplifying this to some regard, because it seems that whole area, that whole stream, is just a big hotspot all the way down. What I did is that I put devices all the way up in the Roosevelt area, all the way down into almost in the not all the way to Vernal, but almost. Anyway, you can look at it on the map. And it seems like you can actually, at some point, you can watch these devices ping as they go down. Like I had some instances, like really weird. I found that like one device that's way up there went off. It had a microwave spike, at whatever frequency, and then it stopped and went down here, and it stopped and went down here, and it actually went all the way down because I had so many devices in that area.
So you saw a chain reaction.
Exactly. It's like this pulse originated, up high near the mountains, and it came down, and it ended up maybe, just to the west of Skinwalker. So it's just very strange that. So I think there's something in the basin. Is there some, way that it kind of has some energy? I don't know. I know that there's things called ley lines, ley lines.
Ley lines. Yeah.
And that's very possible. Maybe there's a flow. You can't define that because there's no way to measure it, but maybe that's got something to do with it.
This would, just before you get to that next question, Les, this would be brilliant, Jim, if you can place these instruments in other parts of the world and you see that chain reaction occurring within a close time frame. The ones that and I suppose that's what you're looking for, is it? That's what you're hoping. Yeah.
So it's kind of ironic. That particular day that happened, I got this message from the people that says, they had this incredibly bad dream, and then this person the same night said they had maybe it was like 20 miles away. They had a really bad dream. It was like they dreamed of this particular thing, and then this other person had, and I said, wait a minute, that can't possibly happen. So I looked at the data, and sure enough, it happened in sequences all the way down, and it was about 3 seconds in between the ones. So it was traveling, whatever wave was traveling at that rate. And that is kind of like almost, I don't know if you guys, sound waves travel like that. It wasn't a sound wave, but it was the microwave actually was happening.
Okay.
It was very strange. It was a very strange occurrence. And I to this day, I'm looking at this thing. It says it really happened, but I can't explain it.
Okay. I'll go another question. Gavin Still Crazy again. Do you think anything is buried inside the mesa?
Like I said, I think there is something there that's causing all of this all of this energy to happen. The problem is that it's probably well outside of reach. It's not the kind of thing. It's not sitting readily available at the surface, and our technology really doesn't allow us to get very deep. I know that the guys at Blind Frog have went down really, really far, but I know there's limitations on Skinwalker. You can't go down very far because of legal issues. But I do think there's something there. And Bob Bigelow swore there was something there. And when I talked to Bob about this, when he had the ranch, he kind of gave me a little insight into the things the reasoning behind all that and all that evidence that he had that he really never talked to anybody about. And I think he was right. I think there is something buried under there.
Why would there be restrictions on going deep there then?
I don't know the legalities of the thing, and I don't want to speak for somebody else, but no. I don't know if they own that. I don't think they own underneath.
Right.
I have no idea what that means, but
it's interesting.
I don't think they're allowed to go down.
Which kind of deepens them. Sorry to pardon the pun, but it deepens the mystery, doesn't it? That they're not allowed to dig because of some kind of restrictions, and obviously it's not the same restrictions at Blind Frog if they've gone down quite deep.
No, because I don't know what the legal term is. They own the underneath part, or
okay.
Whatever that means. Maybe somebody that's watching is smarter than I am about.
Somebody might know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, the mineral rights. I'm sorry.
Mineral rights. Got you. Yeah,
that's right.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Blind Frog, they own everything. So
there'll be a good reason. Good as a reason as anything there. Yeah. I'm going to put this on from the Sober Camper. Hi, Jim. Regarding the phenomenon at Skinwalker Ranch, did you or anybody else there manage to determine an answer for any aspects of the strange happenings? So, where has your research led, Jim?
Yeah, so we did read. There was opportunities, and I continue to read in that general region, and above that, we have indications that there are these stray gamma spikes that happen, and everybody knows that gamma spikes, when they get into your head, actually will cause these illusions, or they will cause these premonitions, or whatever you want to call them, these sensations. So we know that for a fact. I mean, there's no question about it. People that receive radiation treatment to their heads, they're always while they're having these treatments, they get these premonitions, or they get these feelings that are these visions. So we have read, and when I was there, we have read these gamma spikes that were completely out of the ordinary, much higher than what you would consider background. But they happen in spikes, which is very disturbing. That means that if you have something natural occurring, it would occur all the time, right? You just have a steady flow of this stuff. But when you get these things that spike, that's when you start seeing these very strange things happening to people, because that gets into your head. And we felt that, actually, Dr. Green and I felt that was some of the reason why this particular patient had these things, because there was this spike of gamma and also microwave. Because usually when you get a gamma spike, you get microwave, because they interact together and they do things together.
Just before you get to another question, Les, I see Carl. I think you probably know Carl the Crusher. Is it?
Oh,
he's just said, because it's not come up in caps, Carl. 19 foot down, a local lady owns the mineral rights and won't let them dig.
Oh, hi, Carl.
Yeah. So, I think there's a few more maybe questions from Carl, but they're not in caps, so Jess might not have picked them up. If there were questions,
he would know. I mean, he did a lot of research in the area, so he's very good with that.
Okay.
And I know we've just kind of touched on this a little bit, but it's kind of related. Rivington, Pike Beasley, Roscoe is asking, does the paranormal energy ramp up when digging is involved in and around the mesa?
The thing is that when I was there, don't forget, I was only there for a short period of time, for 1 year. That was it. Well, that's not true. So I was there for 2 years prior to even having what everybody now thinks of as Skinwalker. So I was there researching for 2 years. Then they started to do the show, and then I was invited to be chief scientist on that show. So I did a lot of research prior to that. And we never actually did any dig until the show. So we never saw any energy ramp up when we were doing the digging. Of course, it's the same old thing. You never see an accident when you're standing on the street corner, right? So Bigelow was so frustrated with this, and I'm sure that Travis is very frustrated with this. You can't induce this stuff.
No,
it's very, very difficult to induce this stuff. And Bigelow got spent millions of dollars on this place, and he had all these scientists, and they couldn't induce anything to happen. So digging, he tried to dig. He had these big, he had these big machines come. Nothing ever happened. But then as soon as you put the stuff down, you go home and you're comfortable, bam, all of a sudden stuff starts happening. So the answer is...
Sorry, go on. Sorry.
No.
Yeah, do you know, we're speaking same language here, because I say it time and time again that time and time again that unexplained phenomena does not present to order, and you guys have already discovered that, but it presents when it wants to present, and I'm at a loss, and you're just throwing more light on this now with the instrumentation. Now, once we've got these questions over, I can't wait to get to the.
And I just want to augment that thought. It happens when it wants and to who it wants.
Yeah. So it's the individual. Do you think the certain type of individual?
So I don't want to get too deep into this. When you take all the people away, and you leave instruments there, nothing happens. It's just like dead. It's like dead silence.
So you could have a bunch of the best scientists in the world involved on that project, but nothing will happen, do you think, until the right type of individual comes and it interacts with?
Yeah, and you really don't know who that right individual is. No. It could be a scientist. But when you take all that stuff away and you just leave your instruments running and kind of collecting data, all those crazy signals go away.
Yeah. Even simplified, Jim, with EMF meters, we've noted that you get a reaction from the meter, whatever it is that's interacting, and it's almost on the peripheral. If you asked it a direct question, it's not going to tell you, but you could leave it running for 45 minutes, an hour, and suddenly say, right, I'm going to turn these off now because it looks like there's going to be a storm coming, and bosh, they're activated. And is it just coincidence? But it seems to be happening quite a lot, and like almost peripheral. I'll interact on my terms, kind of thing.
Yeah, or it only interacts when it wants to send information. I mean, we don't know that it's like it's talking. What information? And that's the most frustrating thing, is that what the hell is it saying? That's the thing you're trying to solve, right? And the way that we do that is that we collect as much data as we can, and we try to piece together. Okay, this individual got this. This individual got this. This happened when this happened, and anyway, so that's what you're trying to piece together.
Has it given? I better let's get to these questions. Sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, well, you tell me how many more you want, guys, and because we have quite a few in, actually.
A couple more questions, and then we'll get to Jim's data and go back to questions, yeah?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Ginge197 is asking just a little question here. What do you think the animal mutilations are all about?
Well, in general, or on specifically at Skinwalker, because there was one particular instance at Skinwalker while we were there that there was a mutilation, or there was a death, or one of the cows passed away, and it was a very healthy cow. It was filmed on film, running around, just doing its thing. It was a young cow, doing its thing for days, and then all of a sudden it just turned up dead. When we did an autopsy of that, the vet said that it had sudden acute pneumonia, right? We all have pneumonia. I don't know if you know this. We have pneumonia in our bodies all the time. It's our immune system keeps it down. When you get stressed, your immune system gets compromised significantly. He felt that the animal got super stressed, immune system got whacked, and then pneumonia just took over, and within 2 days died. And he felt that, and it was a speculation on his part, that he felt that there was some microwave radiation in the property at that point, because all the animals started hurting and they all got that fright feeling. And that particular animal might have been very much more susceptible. Don't forget, we're all sentient objects. So we don't, just because we're humans, we're not the only ones receiving this stuff. He felt that the cow might have received this thing, got scared because he couldn't rationalize it. Cows, their intelligence level is not up to ours, so he couldn't figure it out anything, and got really, really super scared and got sick and died. So that's what came out of it. So why are these mutilations happening? Well, the deaths of the animals might be that related to just the exact same phenomena that we're dealing with.
Okay, I'll just get a couple more on. Thanks for that, Jim. Alex Thompson, hi, Jim. I think there's some sort of science to this phenomena that we just don't understand yet. Well, yeah, Alex, that's what Jim's been kind of discussing all night.
Yeah.
So, further information on that, Jim, to come
I
out
think
tonight?
that this is exactly right. It's just that it's like any other thing that we don't understand. And it's not that we don't understand it. I think sometimes we don't even know what the questions are to help us understand it. So I think this brings this statement actually quantifies everything that we're doing here. Yeah, we don't know, and we don't understand it yet. And
do you think the phenomena knows how it's interacting with us? Do you think it understands the effects it's having on us?
It looks like it does, because it looks like it's doing it in an intelligent way where it's telling us to do things that are within the normalcy of our everyday life. So if it just came and just hit us, right, and knocked us out or made us go catatonic, but it looks like it's telling us things. I don't want to get too deep into this, but I've had people report to me, and again, everything I tell you, all these anecdotal things are all backed up by scientific readings in the environment.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, it doesn't make it, right? So we had one person say that they sat down in a Indian chief, dressed in garb that was like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, sat down in front of them, and they were in a catatonic state. I mean, they didn't know what was going on. Started reciting things to them, and they were actually writing stuff down on a piece of paper, and then the vision went away. Later, she looked at this, and sure enough, she wrote this stuff on a piece of paper in a language that she never saw before. She had to go find somebody to tell her what this old text was.
Wow.
Okay.
So
there's so many things happening on so many levels there. Then, that's absolutely. There's in the UK, we've got a guy a healer called, I think he's called Ray Brown, and he doesn't live far from here, from where I live. I know he's not been well lately, and they've made TV programs about him in the 80s and 90s, and he claims to be a saint, and somebody's going to correct me, but I think it's Saint John. Oh. And he goes into this, he was a bricklayer, Ray Brown. So, I mean, I would have joined us, so, knocking nails in wood, so I'm not knocking what he did for a living, but obviously not scientifically trained or versed in different languages, but he claims to do this. So where am I going with this? People came to try and discredit him, and they started speaking to him when he was in this state in Aramaic, and he conversed with them. When he was in this transformative
I completely believe that now.
Yeah. That's interesting. So would you not have believed that before you started this?
Absolutely. It would have been one of those, oh, that's interesting, right? When people come to you and they get that blank face, when you tell somebody that's something that's not, you get the blank face, that's what I would have done. But now it's like, oh, that's interesting. That is interesting, because I've seen that happen in more than one case. So I've had many cases where people have said they have done things that they were not absolutely capable of doing.
Yeah, it's incredible. Is there any more questions, Les?
Matt and Abbas, a couple more I just want to get through before we carry on. And Matt and Abbas, what do you think might be the origin of the voices? Could they be from military, remote viewers, or ET? Had to unpack that one.
Well, that's interesting, because I studied under Hal Puthoff, who was the founder of remote viewing. So, and I actually, to tell you the truth, I took a online course in remote viewing. So I wasn't able to do it. And I'll be very frank that I was not able to do it at all. But it's I think so my theory is this, that our abilities to sense these things or experience only tells us that, is there a possibility that we can transmit things? Why every single antenna in the world that you ever bought receives signals, but they also transmit signals. So why can't we also be transmitters of signals? So when you say, well, what you're asking here, is it voices? Could they be from remote viewers? why not? One of the studies that I'm doing right now is that I'm hooking up two experiencers in different parts of the world. I mean, completely remote. They don't know who they are. And I'm trying to get one experiencer to interact with the other experiencer and try to read any changes that while that one experiencer is intenting on the other experiencer, can I read some changes? And does that person know that that's happening at that time? Which would answer this question. And the answer would be absolutely. There has to be a two-way communication. It's not all in, it has to be out.
Yeah. Okay.
So hopefully that answers your question. I was why so arrogant to think that everything has to come from the earth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, right. I'll move on with this one, and then that'll be it for now. From Rod, Dr. Jim, how have you approached the native Indian community for information and guidance?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So the person that helped me set this study up originally is Native American and so well connected within the community. And not just the one tribes. I mean, many, many tribes. They're all over the place in Arizona, in I guess in Nevada area. So very astute person. So, and meeting with this person and spending a lot of time with this person, I started to understand, because the big question I had in my mind was like, why? Why is Native Americans so good at this? Why are people that are medically damaged so good at this? So that was the big, and I don't know if you guys know Gary Nolan. He's he's a researcher. So I do some work with him, and he's actually looking to this. He's saying, are these people, are these people programmed when they're born, or maybe their DNA is changed, through their DNA, or maybe their DNA is changed because of this. So, and that would lead to, is the Native American community just good at this because they've grown up with this, or so I have approached them, and I think that they're going to be a big, in 100 years from now, when we look back and we say, oh yeah, duh. That I think that's going to be, I think they're going to be a big part of it. That answer is going to be a big part of them.
Are we done with questions, Les? We'll just...
Yeah, that's it. I'll disappear for a little while.
Are there any more questions? Well, for later, are there more questions still?
Oh, yes, plenty of questions, guys.
Oh, yeah. That's good. Right. Can we just, before you get to the equipment and the testing and the results, or what you've found so far, somebody touched on animal mutilation, which is not nice. It's a terrible thing. I realize that, but how do they attribute the wounds and the facial stripping, eye removal, ear removal, lack of blood to something that's affecting individuals within their own minds? Any views?
Yeah, I that's one of the areas that is like so confusing. If that actually is happening, there's enough proof out there to show that it is happening. That's like a total, like, I don't get it. Is this a new thing? Is this a different thing? Is this related somehow? So it's one of those big question marks. I don't know. You can't discount it, because, and I hate when people do that, because they look at things on a one-to-one basis, right? They look at things all anecdotally. They say, oh, well, that's crazy. That can't possibly happen. When you look at things, the way that we were trained as scientists, the way Hal, beats into you, is that you have to look at things over long periods of time, and you have to take in all possible things. And you have to strip away all of those preconceived notions that you get. And when you start doing that, that's when you start answering questions. So I'm looking at this and saying, this can't be a phenomenon. First of all, I can't believe these two weird phenomena happening at the same time. They have to be somehow related. But how it is in 100 years, it's going to be obvious. But right now, it's not.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I said that to you before we went on air. Is it phenomena or phenomenon or phenomena, as in one or more? So is it one intelligence of which there are many, or is it many intelligences? We call them intelligences. I mean, is it just, I don't know. Or is it many that are all somehow interacting? But from 2017, New Year's Day 2017 to 2 months into 2019, I don't mean I researched, because I was heavily involved in trying to discover what was killing livestock in the area close to what we will call the affected area. I've never revealed the place. So that's why I've left it that kind of vague, because I gave the word to the farmer that I wouldn't do that. When I got involved, he'd lost 27 sheep. When we'd finished in February 2019, when it sort of petered out, he'd lost 50. I were walking those fields between 4:30 a.m. 3 to 4 days a week, and 8 a.m. He would do the other days. He's not looking for anything unexplained. No UFOs, nothing. He thinks that this is a land-based predator, despite all the evidence pointed to it not being, because there were clean cuts, facial strips. And Jim, I've got loads, hundreds of pictures of these things, which I've shown to lots of people. I mean, they're very graphic, and at conferences, but it changed for him. And I'll just give you this brief example, because we want to get to your equipment. On the 28th of June, 2017, because he's looking for a land-based predator, fox, badger, or man, or, somebody's doing this. And he arrived to see to his sheep, and he'd set a corridor up of galvanized panels to run the sheep into, and then they ran through these troughs with chemical in to treat the feet. 6 sheep, nose to tail. And it was a hard job, 300 to 400 sheep on the field. I'm rushing because I want to get to Jim. It's not Paul. And but it'll relate to Skinwalker. He gets there this morning. I'd already been the day before, and they don't like it. They can smell it. It involves pain. It must sting the feet for parasites and things. And in this corridor is 30 sheep, packed in, upside down on the sides. It's a carnage. He can't believe it. So he starts unpegging the panels, dragging them out, standing with them a few minutes till they can gain some kind of balance and releasing them. There's 2 dead. My mind immediately went to Skinwalker and the bulls that were in that container. And we got not the same, but the similarities. And his mindset changed then. And from then he was looking for what some people would call the woo. He realized that something strange was happening. And while I were on those fields, Jim, I were hearing voices. I've got a pulsar thermal camera. There's nothing around but sheep. I've seen flashes of light, strange flashes of light that just appeared from nowhere, almost like a spark in grass, but you could see it. Sure. So there's so many similarities. And I'm sorry for firing away there, talking about the animal mutilations, but have you any more views to add to that? Have you dealt with that at all, or is it purely the physical injuries and that people are exhibiting that you're dealing with?
Well, yeah. I go back to this original injury that I first investigated when I first got into this whole thing. The person that got injured felt that they were getting instructions to do something. And it's very possible that whatever this phenomena is, or this entity is using this ability that they have to induce actions by people, or to give them instructions and have them carry these things out. It's very possible that they're using this to perform these acts. Now, some of these things that from what I understand, are well beyond the normal technology that you would find in a field that somebody would carry in their pocket. These are almost surgically based. So yeah, that's kind of speculation. So I don't really know, but I know for a fact that a lot of the interactions that happen, the experience that happen, are instructions, or maybe not some instructions are sinister instructions, but instructions are given to people or other sentient objects. It's very possible that, we're not the only sentient objects on the planet. So it could be other things that this phenomena is interacting with and giving instructions. So it's very possible that they're asking somebody to go and do some surgery on something. I don't, that's pure speculation. It's no scientific backing on that one.
But it's worth throwing out there, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can consider it. So the equipment, the equipment that you've developed, how many people within team have been developing this with you, Jim?
Well, and initially, when I first started this thing, I was being funded by this gentleman in Europe that was very wealthy, very the great philanthropist.
Reading my mind, I was just going to say, are you funding this yourself?
And then, no, there was somebody that funded the original devices that were sent out. There was, over 30 devices that were actually over 40 devices that were sent out. They was funded by somebody else, but all the data and all that stuff was funded by basically myself. So I did a lot of my own funding after that. So it wasn't significant, but it was way more than zero. So
Yeah, yeah.
I did a lot of this myself based upon what this original person had given me the money to pursue. And since then it's been a lot of my stuff. But now like I said, I ended my study about a year ago. I was very satisfied. I'm actually trying to put this all together in a book so people can read about it, and I can give everybody all sorts of stuff. And then since then, I've been getting hammered by all these people asking me where'd you go? Can you please start up again? So I decided to start up again and make it more generally available and let anybody get onto this thing. And so again, I'm using the watch, inexpensive watch. I do have some devices that people could start buying now. And I just said, I got all this data. I have all these models now. I can make these predictions. I can give people some sense of normalcy to their life where they didn't have it. So I decided, what the heck? So let me open this up to everybody. So that actually started to be honest with you, a few months ago.
So brilliant. So if somebody bought one of these devices that's going to potentially give information about the strange occurrences, that's what we're looking for. Are they involved in the project, or are they just going to give you the data and you're going to put that data out? Do they feel involved? Is the feedback from you?
So there's a couple things. So I've been thinking about how to do this. Again, this is all new for me. So I've been thinking about how to do this. One thing I want to do is I want to help the person to get through their daily lives and give them the information they need in order to, get a comfortableness with the experiences, right? So that's the sole goal with this. To do that, I have these mathematical models running that they can use to give them predictions on like how, based upon all the stuff that's been going on, all the things and all the readings, all the stuff you're saying, this is how you're going to go about your normal life for the next 2 or 3 weeks and things like that. So that's the thing I want to give back. But also, I want the people to have access to that data whenever they want. It's their data. They can download it. They can do whatever they want with it. But I would like to use it, continue to use it to help me build the models that allow me to make predictions and do the scientific research. But so that's two. Then on top of that, any data that I get and all the data that I have prior, I want to open it up to any scientist that contacts us and says, look, I want to be able to make my predictions. Can you, that's kind of weird because a lot of the data that I get is personal information about people. And I'm trying to figure out how to do that without violating their trust in what they've given me.
I suppose, I don't know, something will have to be drawn up within the individual to say how much information they're prepared to release.
Exactly, right. What is private? What is private that I want you to use to enhance your understanding, but what I would like to give public. So I think that's probably something that's going to have to be part of this whole thing.
And are you worried? Let's assume I purchase one of these devices, which I'm definitely going to do, by the way, without a doubt. But are you worried then that you're going to get bombarded with people such as myself, because I can't understand the data that it's giving me? I'll hold my hands up. I'm not scientifically trained, so it could become overwhelming unless you've got other people that are going to help you do this. You need people on board. They can't just be, Jim Segala.
That's a great point. I have about a half a dozen people that were in the first study that I've already contacted that are gearing up. They're ready to go. They're going to be the people that are, going to be able to look at some of the stuff and talk to them. And, what I had a habit of doing in the first thing is looking at the data, because I get the data and then I have my models all sift through it, and it kind of gives me synopsis of what's going on. And then I would contact the people and say, a week ago, they don't see this stuff. No. They don't see it for like a 2-week period. So I would say, can you kind of go over that and tell me what happened, and get a little bit more detail than you typed into the website. And they would go through and they would talk about that, and then I would reveal to them. I said, oh, by the way, here's what happened. In fact, I'll show you one if you want. Please. And they would be, oh my God, like what the heck? And So I want that to continue. I want this to be more of a personal thing where they say, I didn't show you my data, but you told me all about what was going on in your life. So here's some correlations. And, when these things happen, that's the kind of thing you should be looking for. So I want that to continue.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big, big part of it.
I can see this growing though, Jim. I can see you being overwhelmed with but that's what you're looking for. You know,
a lot of experiencers. Yeah.
As a researcher and writer of these anecdotal evidence, that's what I'm collecting essentially.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? I know you do. I crave these incredible accounts, but now I'm up at 5 a.m. I put the computer on, and I've not got reams and reams, but I've got 4 or 5 emails on average, and I respond to people, and you're gathering it, and there's only me. So I'm finding it quite overwhelming. Not just 4 or 5 emails a day aren't overwhelming me, but you've got to write it up. You've got to visit people. You're going all over the place. So this is going to grow. I can see this. It's what you're doing.
And I think that one of the interesting ideas that have been coming out of this is that, social media is one of the biggest areas that is completely untapped. And I don't know, Jacques Vallée. Have you heard of him? Yeah.
I don't know Jacques Vallée, but
Jacques Vallée, because there's a group of these crazy people that I'm involved with that are these high level guys like Kit Green and Hal and Jacques and all those, Gary Nolan, all those guys. We kind of have this little community. Anyway, so I kind of pinged Jacques and I said, is there a way to bring in social media, sift through it, look for patterns, look for these things? Because if something's weird going on, the kids are going to talk about it. Social media is going to get inundated. Yeah. You can start pulling this out with the whole I don't know if you're familiar with natural language processing, all that stuff.
Yeah.
All that's that technology that's available. You can start feeding on all that stuff and start getting patterns and saying, oh, wait a minute. This looked like this thing just came right down the East Coast and it went out the, you can see these things happen.
You can see pattern forming and
exactly. So those are the kind of things that I want to try next. And it takes people and it takes a lot of people having these devices in order to do that.
I know we're getting to devices and I keep kind of cutting you. Are you still okay for time, Jim? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
That's good. And I keep cutting across you. But did you think when you started at Skinwalker working for them that you would end up at this point that you're at today?
No, so it was a one and done on this first patient. It was like, okay, go figure out what's going on and get back. And then you get back and you get this weird feeling. It's like, wait a minute. And everybody knows everything. There's no such thing as an anomaly. If it happened to one person, it's going to happen to other people. And so then I started hearing like, oh, wait a minute, there's another person that this kind of happened to. And there's another person. So you hear, if you have 5 people, there's thousands of people. So what I feel is that there's thousands and thousands of people out there that might not even know that they've been afflicted by something like this.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know. I had no idea.
No, it's fascinating. I can't remember how long. Les probably would remember that when you came on Truth Proof last time, but it's got to be over a year ago. I'm pretty sure. And I don't mean that you've changed what you're saying, but because you're so genuine and true to what you're doing, and I mean that sincerely. But you can see that it's evolving. The thought process in my mind, listening to you then. To today, and this is fascinating. So, the equipment.
So I just want to give you a bit an idea. I don't want to get too crazy into this, but
well, we've got 13 minutes, so we can do 10, 15 minutes on whatever you want, and then we'll jump to some questions if you like, Jim.
So just so everybody knows, I don't keep anything hidden or anything. I posted all of my research on a website. I don't know if you want me to.
Yeah, please do share it with all the information that people can reach out to you.
I actually I put it in our private chat, so maybe if you want to post it or whatever.
Let's move on to that.
All the research on there, all the things that came out of this, all the papers that were written and stuff like that. So, am I sharing? Are you seeing this?
You are. I can see that. Yeah,
and you can see the brain.
Yes.
Oh, you can see it, so I can see it. This is a sample of the brain MRI, and you can see all the damage that was done inside. This is not a normal thing that happens in here. This is basically the determination that Dr. Grant and I made is that the radiation did come from the back of the head. And you can see this is the bump in the back of the head.
The bump, yeah.
Yep. And you can see that this should be normally very, very flat and very normal and very round. This thing just went crazy, and you can see there was significant. You can see my cursor, right? Yeah.
I can see. Yeah,
significant damage.
Clear, Jim. Yeah.
Yep. Significant damage right here, and if you look at all the damage that was done in here, and they took actually biopsies of all this stuff, a lot of leukocytes were in here, meaning that there was some damage in there, and your immune system came in and started attacking and try to clean all this stuff up, all the white cells that came to clean all the mess up that was made in here. So whatever happened, it happened within here, and it actually penetrated and got deep within here. And so this is just kind of give you an idea of what could happen in I don't want to scare anybody, so I don't want to think everybody has to go wear aluminum foil on their head. This is a very rare case. This probably happens once in billions of occurrences, but this has actually happened. This is what started me on this path, seeing this and saying, well, this is not a natural thing. This didn't happen from any gamma ray burst, or didn't happen any weapon that the United States could build. Impossible.
This is the original injury that you investigated.
This is just one of the pieces. But just to give you an idea that these are just some of the things. In fact, this presentation is on that site, so anybody can get a hold of this thing. So right now, this is the main device that gets used. That was in the 30s. It was 36 people, but only really say 32 of them were active, where the people participated and put stuff in every day. So this is the device. It's kind of like the workhorse device that got me all the data to begin with. This device over here was the one that I built for Blind Frog. So they actually have this, and this is something that measures the stuff on their ranch, because there's a lot of activity going on there. And every time those people get on there, crazy stuff starts to happen. And this is the device. This is the new device now that I'm actually making, that is much cheaper, much easier to use, that I can send out, and people could afford to buy this thing. It's less than a tri-field meter, basically. Okay. And then this guy was something that I just got so much pressure from all these individuals. They said, I'm not at home all the time. Can you give me something that I can, drive around with and go to my job with? So this is not, I have to replace this actually.
Jim, do you get people to keep a diary while they're using the device?
Oh, yes, they have to. No, not have to. They're encouraged to every single day, or several times a day. There's a website that they go in and they can put in their information. I'll show you some of the stuff. But they're so it's all orchestrated. So I can timestamp within milliseconds that something happened on this equipment and something happened in their lives, and I can marry those two and actually have a very good statistical model for it.
So the device on the left.
This guy.
No, the other one.
This guy?
That one.
That got replaced by a watch. That got replaced by the watch.
So that device or the watch would be the one that you take with you to the location of strangeness. Would we say?
This was in their pocket, but it got it's like people have better technology than I do. So I actually just buy this watch and I put our software on the watch, and so it works out perfectly.
Okay.
So these. So anyway, so these are the devices that we have so this is the workhorse devices. Now there's a cleaner version, and I have some data up here, and it shows you that it's operating and going good. What I decided to do is, and I can actually show you some examples of this. So this is modular, and that because this MUPOS is modular, unidentified phenomena. So this thing is modular in that you can, every time new signals come about that we want to measure, I can plug something into the back of this thing. So right now I can plug in, I don't know if you've heard of this thing called an SDR. It's a software defined radio.
Okay.
So a lot of times you get these microwave pulses, and all I read is like the overall energy over a very wide range. Now, somebody asked about 1.6 gigahertz, which is just below microwave and just above the normal military channels of 800 and 900. So what that does, the software-defined radio, it actually is going to give you a waveform to show you exactly where it came from. So you'll be sitting there at home, you'll have this like incredible like headache or something like that. You'll go over, look at the device, and you'll find out that you have this 1.6 gigahertz spike going on that is, not normal in environment. It's not usually used. And then so you get a better information of what's going on. And that's what this stuff is designed to do. It's not going to tell you where it's coming from. It's going to give you the ability to sense that there are signals in your environment causing you to have these reactions.
It's brilliant. And it's giving you the sort of meat on the bone of extra to the anecdotal, isn't it? Yeah.
And the big device, the ones on Blind Frog, also looks for occurrences of anything up in the air. So it's got cameras and stuff like that. The one on the ground gives you, I read everything, the gyroscopic stuff, because that's very, very sensitive, and you never know what's going to happen because we live in a gyroscopic world. Everything is rotating. The ground vibrations, all the infrasound, all the sonic radiation coming from the ground, I read that. All the magnetic and microwaves, I read all that. Earth gravitational wave and Earth gravitational vector and all that stuff I read. So I have all that going in to the device. It's recording all day long. It just keeps it for you and when you want to look at it. The one on your hand doesn't have actually that's wrong. It doesn't have the gamma, and I apologize. I couldn't get gamma in there on the watch. So if there is gamma, you have to be home with your base station stuff to read that. So these are the devices, and this is what they do. And then what you get are these readings. Some of these readings, this is what you call the noise floor. This is like a nice, even day. Everything is cool. This is just normal gyroscopic readings. I just want to give you that. But then sometimes, and this is the website that you enter your stuff on. Yeah. Sometimes you get some crazy stuff going on. So these are some of the anecdotal things that people enter. So they would enter. So this has actually happened. So there was this massive microwave spike. You have to remember, people can't in their house create this. Even if you put this thing in your microwave oven, you can't create readings this high. So you get these massive radiation spikes going on at the same time, and they can't see this obviously. And at the same time, you get these very strange occurrences that they're experiencing, and they write these things in there, and I display it later on so they can see it. But
so just before you move on from that, then, because you're talking about this massive microwave spike, I should imagine it's dangerous in some instances, is it? Or would it have to be prolonged?
Yeah. See, that's the thing.
I know you're not wanting to frighten people, Jim.
So this is
curious.
Milliseconds. Very short. Some of these things, like this is over here. These are all milliseconds. This is, a lot of these things are in the millisecond range. So it's these. And it's not these prolonged, long, big energies, because it's very difficult to sustain high energy things, right? You have to have a lot of capacity to do that. So a lot of these things are just pulsed. And then you start, and the pulse is what anybody that's an engineer or a physicist I know that changing magnetic and electric fields are the dangerous things, because they induce currents in your head and they cause you to have these hallucinations. So that's one of the biggest problems. Like in an MRI machine, some people have problems because that big changing magnetic fields induces things into their head, and that's when they start having these problems. These are another instances. Most of these a lot of these things I can't show you what they're saying. I didn't put this in here because it's personal stuff, but all of these things, if I showed it here, is that they had some interaction, or they had some sensation that they wanted to report, and they did report it. And then I have so many of these things. Like I said, I have like over 300 verified where I have a spike like this, and then something else was going on with their life. And then these are case studies. I have 2 case studies that I have in the report. And everybody can read these. Just run this on the site.
Yeah. Les will definitely give us all the information where they can get back to you.
And I was given permission by the person to actually show this in public, and they provided me this happened. Actually, this is a very strange case. In fact, this case, I think this is the one. So this is a one where somebody, and I don't want to get people nervous, but this was a high-level government employee that was felt like they were being attacked. And this was persistent for years. And they came to me and said, can you put a piece of device in my house? Because, I want to record this, and I want to be able to understand what the heck is going on, because I'm having problems, my wife's having problems, and my kids are having problems. So we put a device in there. And then one particular day, they were having such problems. There was in fact, you can read this, everybody can see it. So there was headaches, there was nosebleeds, there was a whole bunch of things going on. Got to the point, because they were a high-level government employee, the FBI contacted me and they wanted this information. So I had to give them a complete report. And they never told me what they did with this, but this happened over a period of I think it was 4 hours or something like that. And then everything subsided, all the symptoms went away, everything was fine. But they had this incredible night and then the equipment just picked up this incredibly high. And this is crazy high stuff. So the gamma rays went crazy, because normally this is just a nice flat line and there's nothing. All of a sudden, this thing just went incredibly noisy. And then you had these very large microwave spikes. So this was one that was very, very crazy that I had to give over to the.
I'm just curious. Does this imply then that people are interested in what you're doing? How did they find out, Jim? The FBI.
Oh, the FBI. Well, this person reported. So this person, for a period of, I think, 6 months, was having these problems. They thought they were being spied on. They thought there was trucks down there, and being a high level, they have the security clearances. So they thought they were being spied on. So they called the FBI. FBI didn't help, and they couldn't help them because I don't know anything about this. So somehow got in contact with me. I said, the only thing that I can do for you is I can give you this opportunity to have this instrumentation, be able to type in all this information on a daily basis, and then I can give you something. It just turned out that it was actually pretty, it's pretty demonstrative what we came up with. And then he called the FBI and says, "Oh, by the way, I got this guy that recorded all this stuff. Why don't you come in and talk to him?"
I see. Yeah,
it was interesting.
It's interesting, but it's brilliant. It's just putting more meat on the bone of what we're all looking into. It's brilliant.
And unfortunately, this person to this day still has persistent experiences that are in there's medical issues, unfortunately. So I feel bad for these people, but at least they had some. At least they know that it didn't come from within their head, and they're just not making this stuff up. They actually saw some physical evidence that it happened. Anyway,
it's just giving peace of mind as well. Once again, pardon the pun.
Well, that's the whole idea, is that I want to give people peace of mind. This is another incident of somebody that is probably started out to be the most rational person on the planet. Never had an experience, never had anything. Had this equipment because it was just a friend of a friend that said, "Okay, I'm going to put it in there." And I thought it was a nice plus. You always want to have a negative in your data. This person had zero data for months and months, and all of a sudden, one night, they woke up, and the quote is, "I'm telling you, last night was such a crazy night. If I were to say I was ever abducted, it would have been last night. It was such a strange experience." And that was the anecdote they put in. And then I went back, and they never saw any of this data. I went back and looked at it, and I said, "Oh my God, at that exact moment, this happened." It was like this incredible gamma ray spike. And I just want to make sure everybody understands, there is no way on earth a person in their house can create this much gamma.
No.
It's impossible. Unless they have literally an accelerator in their house. And I doubt many people have one of those.
I just hope people, until you'd explained this, Jim, I hope other people like myself understand magnitude of what you're actually showing us.
Yeah, this is actually pretty high. And at the time, I believe they didn't put it in here, but they also, after I talked to them later on, they said, it's funny, that night the dogs were barking crazy outside, all the neighborhood dogs and things like that. And actually their kids reacted to some extent with this. So
we're not even going to get a chance to get to the animal and their perception of what's happening, really, are we?
No, there's just so many things that animals are better than us at interpreting, because they don't have all those filters that we get, all the junk in our heads. Again, disorientated. We woke up very confused, and then it went away.
And are you? If people wanted to leave I suppose it's up to individual, is it, how much personal information they want to leave on? Because like you've just said, you've got to be very careful with this.
I warned everybody that, I don't share anything with anybody. And if I do, I asked this person's permission. I said, can I make this public? So they said, yeah. So anytime I actually do anything like that, I make sure that because people actually have a tendency, once they have a place to put it, when they know it's secure and they can trust it, they actually start saying some really interesting things.
Yeah.
But you have to make it so it's like seriously trustable.
Once they feel relaxed in those conditions, they'll run with it. Yeah.
So it never leaves the cloud. It really never leaves anything. There's very few people that see this data. But when it does happen, and I do get this data, that's when I say, boy, that's significant.
It's really good. It's fabulous.
So again, I do have a website where I put all this stuff. And the website's only like 2 months old, because I started talking to people, and they said, they started asking me all these questions, and I try to give them answers. I said, the best way to do this, I'm just going to give it to them. Here's all the data. And then also, because there were so many people going to the website, Dr. Green and Dr. Kelleher wanted to have a survey. And I actually approached them. I said, I have all these people hitting the site now that are verified experiencers. I said, is there anything you want to ask them to help your research into this autoimmune connection to experiencers? And they said yes. And so on the site, there's a place so you can go. If you wouldn't mind,
please do.
If you
and I'm sure Leslie's going to have all these links. If he ain't got them after this stream, he will do at some point next day or so. I know he will.
I have so many of these. I don't want to bore people, but
well, I think after giving us all this information, Jim, it's a shame not to fill us in where they can get in touch with you and where they can find out more.
So this is the site. I do have some studies that I have. One of these studies is the survey. And of course, all this now is all Dr. Green and Dr. Kelleher. So this is their quote. This is the quote from them. And if you go into here, these are the questions that they're asking. Now, these are designed by them,
right,
to help them understand a connection between experiencing and this autoimmune problem, because it's just very prevalent, and they really want to understand this. So this is the questions, and we have a lot of people that fill this out, but the more and more people fill this out, the more they can get this data. And then as soon as they give me the results of their findings, I'm going to post it here. So everybody gets a chance to see this thing. And then
and are these surveys filled in anonymously?
There's no way for me to know who this is. There's nothing on here that says who you are. I do have other places on the site that if you want to get into it. See, the problem is that for somebody to really get investigated that had some earlier problems is very expensive. And Dr. Green had funding to do this from the same person that funded this other stuff for me, but that person no longer funds these. So he doesn't have the funding. He would love to be able to take patients and continue this, but but he's willing to, if they do want to physically contact him, to fill out, like contact us and stuff like that. And then we look at that, and maybe Dr. Green would like to say, oh, wait a minute, that's a really cool case, and I really want to get into that.
I want to work on that. Yeah.
But this is the public one to say, okay, fill this in, let us know about this, because we're going to start seeing some patterns here. And then, fill this in honestly to say, what is it like? And then this gets run through a natural language processor. So we start picking out all these little things. It's, oh, wait a minute. When this person said this and they filled in this thing. So you get these patterns, and then, oh, wait a minute, that's interesting. And then science is a evolutionary thing, right? You build and build and build. So we just want a foundation. We want to fill in our foundation, and then build to the next step. So this is going to help us do that.
Thank you, Jim. And I'm mindful that we've got probably about 10 minutes left, Jim.
Yeah,
so
and I won't take up your time.
You're not taking our time up. We're thankful of yours. I'm just wondering if you're happy to take a few questions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. No, thanks, Les.
I'm back. I'm here on time. And the question is from Martin Abbas. Brain sclerosis has been found in contactees. Was this found on the victim's CT scans?
That's a And that's a question for Dr. Green. That's a really good question for Dr. Green. I'm going to answer it by saying we have found, and it's very difficult to give this information because that's kind of like you're boarding on the HIPAA stuff. But a lot of the patients that he's investigated and I investigated, we did find things like that in some of our scans. So we've got scans from I don't even know, 50 or 60 people. Patients now of his that have this kind of thing, and there is evidence of that. So the answer to that is I don't know that specifically, but yes, the answer is very possibly.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Martin. Great question. Vincent Tomlinson, not so much a question, but an observation. There was an article this week about a cosmic bubble in which we are in, and the outer side of it creates stars which bounce off the bubble. It's also implied we are in a galactic quarantine. Interesting. Send us the article, Vincent. I'd like to read that myself. Yeah.
Very possible. That's interesting. Is there this thing? But we do get light from. I mean, we have the telescopes are out there that are measuring. So that's interesting. So I don't know. I don't have an answer to this question, but I'm actually going to look that up because that's actually quite interesting.
Well, if Les finds it before you, he'll probably send it you.
So Vincent, thank you so much for asking that. I actually gave me something to research. That actually looks pretty cool.
Right. Okay.
Very good.
Thanks. And Melvin Suter, hi Jim. Has anyone captured the skinwalker either on a camera or trail cam or on video?
You can't be on the corner where the accident happens, unfortunately. So this is what I truly believe. I think that there has been captured images. We just don't know how to interpret them. So what the camera sees and what our brain sees are going to be different. And what the camera sees might be some energy, some photonic energies, because what the camera captures is all photons, right? Everything is photons. We just might not be able to interpret that from the film or not the film. Like you can see how old I am. So from the actual the way that records the transistors that are recording this thing. But I believe we have. We just don't know how to pull it out of the data. That's the thing.
Okay.
Interesting.
Great answer. And thanks, Mel. I hope you're feeling better, mate.
Yeah.
Not been too good lately.
Tino's got a question in tonight. And hello, Jim. Do you agree that all these ranches just happen to be in the crosshairs of active areas, implying that the zones are more plentiful than we realize? That's a great question.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no question about it. So if you look at Blind Frog, you look at, I think that Mount Wilson, I mean, all of those ranches that report these things, I think that there's, if you, like I said, in 100 years from now, if we look back and we find out all of this stuff, we're going to see like this waves of stuff. And every time you see this trough or this peak, you're going to say, oh, wait a minute, that's Blind Frog. Oh, wait a minute, that's Mount Wilson. Oh, wait a minute, that's Skinwalker or in your area or.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Oh, yeah, I get it now.
And this data is going a long way, or it will do, to sort of pioneer that and show that pattern that you're talking about. Yeah.
So I think it can't be a coincidence. I mean, you can't look at everything and say, oh yeah, that's just a one-off or that's just an anomalous thing.
Right, and this kind of follows on from that, Jim. I think you got an invitation here from Martin Abbas. Would Jim visit Bempton to see if the findings are replicated there?
Sure,
I'd love it to come through. Yeah, it would be really good.
Yeah,
we're doing a conference in summer. I think they've got the speakers, Jim, to be honest, and I'm speaking at it, but they've got guys from Skinwalker coming through. I think there's about 4 of them. And so that will be good because we're talking about areas of high strangeness. And that's why I'll be speaking, but something to work on there, Jim. I'd love you to visit.
Yeah. And check the plane departures, Jim, because you might feel you want to come across.
Yeah.
Okay, for Carl Crusher. No, not Carl Crusher. No, we'll do that one again, Les. Carl Crusher, yes, the scientific data lines up at the same time as a phenomena appearing.
Yeah. Yes, so that's in fact, Carl actually verified that.
He did.
Unbeknownst to him. So it's going to happen after this fact.
Right, yeah.
No, thank you. And unless we got Revenant.
Going to move on to Revenant. It was a Revenant. The next, thanks for the question, Reb. How much of the activity does Jim think is military tech, or do you believe it is all paranormal?
Thanks, Rev. I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I did do some research into this whole Havana syndrome thing because the intersection between Havana syndrome and the experiencers and hitchhiker, which is too real to just say it didn't. It's impossible. And so I think there is. I think that it's very possible that the military has got more information than we do and might be utilizing already something that they've learned about this phenomena in their own way. It's very possible. I'm not saying they are, but who knows?
And speculation, could they, in fact, then in some instances, muddy the waters a little bit to stop other people learning what they know?
Yes.
I know it's all speculating. We don't know, do we?
I mean, you think about what my intentions might be in the future is that if I have the ability to make in any situation, if you have the ability to predict when a situation is going to happen, you have the ability to modify the situation, which means you're communicating with the situation.
Yeah.
So if you can communicate with it, that means that you have the ability now to change its behavior. So that's not too far in the future.
Or attempt to change it, Jim. And we go down one rabbit hole, the dark passage, and another one opens up.
Yeah. But I think the Reverend gets another question in tonight. Can you trust bought tech to monitor the unexplained? And do you make your own equipment? I think you've gone through that tonight.
But there's this whole idea of, when do you say AI is the right thing to help you piece through the data? Can you trust that? And so that's always a big question mark that I have. So when you say tech, you have to bring in AI because AI is a huge part of tech. So,
But to answer your question, Jim, I think you're making these hands-on. You're making.
So these are all scientific instruments that I buy, and they're verified, and they all have the sheets that show that they have a certain amount of accuracy. So I have all that, so I can at least have all the confidence in that. And there's nothing in between those sensors and that website. So there's nothing in between doing anything to it. Okay. So you can verify that that's actually what's happening in the environment. So you can't trust that.
And we did put your website into the stream's description tonight. So that's Jim. So that'll be okay. People can have a look on there and familiarize themselves more with what you've been talking about tonight. So let's have a look. Ginge 197. I don't know if it's an incomplete question. This one.
I think it is. Has Jim ever experienced anything like this? And we don't know what it is.
Relating to. Sorry, Ginge. Right then, I'll get onto this one, which is the Honesty Man. The Honesty Man, who actually owns the ranch. My apologies if you covered this earlier, but I lost the connection.
I was assuming he's on about Skinwalker.
Who owns Skinwalker?
Yeah. I presume that's
Brandon. I guess Brandon Bugle still owns it. I would imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're getting pretty close for time here. So.
Yeah, Martin Abbas, is the base in the receiver or the source?
That is the burning question. I think that it could be a receiver and a source at the same time. And it could be reflecting. It could be moving it around. You don't know. I think the basin is just, it does a lot of things to this thing. And if you nothing that receives doesn't transmit. Everything, it reflects. I mean, look at
and you don't. And are you interpreting this as because of the shape of it?
Or the contents of it, or if you look at it, it is parabolic in nature. So, I mean, that is a great question. That's a big question mark for, is it gathering or is it reflecting or is it, and then of course our brains have to remember, our brains only work on linear time. There's no reason that this thing is working in linear time. It could be gathering and then at some later time releasing. You don't know. Yeah, it's fabulous. It's very difficult to do this.
Okay.
Figure it out.
Yeah, just an observation from our friend Peter Masters.
Peter Masters.
Bottom graph was similar to a Rudstone, the Rudstone stone that we recorded, Paul.
It was when we went with Peter, and I know that we're just about up, but Peter, he's been using the equipment, the updated equipment that they were using at Skinwalker, because it's his friends who developed it. So some of the electrical
software,
tech.
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate to have Peter. It's a pity we couldn't get you two talking at some point, but
that would have been brilliant.
Yeah.
So 3 more questions. I ain't been able to get out. Sorry, folks, for not getting those out. Got to thank everybody for sending the monetary donations in tonight. Always helps the channel, doesn't it, Paul?
It really does.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Jessica, for sending the questions through. Thank you, Jessica. Been a great show, and I'll leave the final word to you two guys.
Well, it's just been a pleasure, Jim, and you've made it easy for me. A bit daunting. I'm talking to a scientist, and I've really enjoyed it. And honestly, let's do it again. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And good questions, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have a great crowd in. Thank you very much. Right. See you all next week.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.